So when you hear the word discipline, what immediately comes to mind? Is it just sort of brute force? You know, that white knuckle grind, something you just impose on yourself?
Yeah, sheer willpower, right?
Exactly. For a lot of us, I think discipline feels like this necessary, but frankly, exhausting punishment.
Yeah.
It's all about resisting things and forcing an outcome.
But, if you look deeper, especially into classical systems, systems of internal development, that whole modern idea kind of falls apart.
How so?
Well, what if discipline or tapas, the inner fire of self-effort wasn't just random struggle? What if it was actually highly refined systematic process, something that starts with the really simple, tangible stuff in life and moves up towards genuine spiritual wisdom?
A systematic process. Okay, that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're doing a really focused deep dive into the 6 domains of tapas. It's a framework, really, that organizes this whole idea of disciplinary practice. And it's rooted in the concepts from Eightfold Yoga, specifically the practices known as the niyamas. And this systemization, this logical progression, comes from the researcher Sachin J. Karnik.
Right. And our mission today really is to track how tapas moves. It's like this continuous force, a deliberate path, step by step, moving from let's call them the gross aspects of our life.
The things we can touch and feel.
Exactly. Things you can measure, feel right away. And it moves all the way to the most subtle aspects, consciousness, identity, that kind of thing. It's not just a checklist. It's really an evolution.
Okay.
And each level, it builds on the one before it. It creates momentum. And crucially, it gives you very specific, measurable outcomes as you, the learner, progress towards, internal mastery.
Okay, let's unpack that journey then. Starting right at the beginning, at the foundation. You mentioned this core idea of the continuum, gross to subtle. Now, if the end goal is subtle, like internal realization, why is starting with the really tangible gross stuff of the body, why is that so critical? Why not just jump straight into, say, meditation or inquiry?
Well, it really boils down to leverage and structural integrity, you could say. The gross aspects, mostly the physical body, they're the most tangible, right? They're ruled by inertia, by habit.
Okay.
So they're the necessary starting point if you want to build any kind of measurable momentum. Think about it psychologically, too. You can't really ask your mind to trust that you can sustain subtle effort if you haven't even proven to yourself you can control something basic, like your physical habits.
Right, you need proof of concept first.
Exactly. Tapas needs organized, step-by-step success. So by starting with the gross, you introduce friction, something you can actually feel and measure and overcome. And that initial win, that success, it's the essential proof, psychologically and energetically, that you need to even tackle the later, more invisible challenges.
That really lays the groundwork. Okay, so the first stop on this roadmap is domain 1, the physical body. Now, when most people think discipline, this is probably where their mind goes first. Diet, exercise, getting up early, that sort of thing.
Yep, classic examples.
So this is the entry point, but we need to understand the kind of effort we're talking about here. What's the experience?
Right. The experience for the practitioner in this domain, it's defined as friction with habit. It's that raw, almost visceral effort against the body's natural pull towards comfort, towards ease, towards inertia. What some classical texts might call tamas.
Inertia, yeah.
So this is where you feel that resistance, not just like in the gym lifting weights, but in the consistency of your whole day. It's the friction against hitting snooze. We all are. Or, choosing the easy processed food, or even just slumping into bad posture. The actual discipline is an external physical act, but you feel it inside as resistance against what's comfortable.
Okay, so the effort is this consistent push against what's easy or habitual. What's the outcome then? The evolutionary outcome. What do you gain from constantly applying this physical friction?
Well, the source material points to 2 really concrete results: health and generalized discipline. Health is pretty obvious, right?
Yeah.
A body you consistently apply discipline to, it just functions better.
Makes sense.
But that generalized discipline, that's the real treasure here. Mastering this foundational friction is critical because it means your body stops being this constant source of distraction for your mind. Think about it. If your body is screaming at you from bad diet, no sleep, chronic tension.
Your mind can't focus on anything else. Yeah.
Exactly. It can't rest. It can't focus. So by getting disciplined here, you create this stable, kind of neutral platform. You're basically telling your internal systems, okay, this physical part is managed now. It won't interfere with the higher work. Without that basic control, the energy you need for the next levels, the more subtle ones, it just keeps leaking away dealing with physical stuff.
So that initial friction creates the stable vehicle, the platform. Okay. Now, moving to domain 2, we hit the sensory senses. This feels like a shift. We're moving past the physical structure itself and focusing more on the interface,
Right.
the boundary between the body and the world.
That's a perfect way to put it, a critical distinction. If level 1 was about controlling what the body does in action, level 2 is about controlling what the body takes in, the input. And the experience here is defined as restraint and withdrawal. This is often what's called pratyahara in the Eightfold Yoga system. It's the conscious, deliberate act of pulling your attention back from that overwhelming flood of sensory input sights, sounds, notifications, tastes, everything.
Which, let's be honest, in our modern world is incredibly difficult. We're practically wired to respond to every little ping and notification. It feels like survival sometimes. So why apply tapas, this self-effort, to something seemingly passive like sensory input? And how is this different from just like depriving yourself?
That's a great question. It's really not about deprivation. It's about consolidation. In our world, yeah, we're drowning in sensory stuff. Notification addiction is real.
Tell me about it.
So this domain of tapas is about saying no to scattering your attention everywhere. Instead of just being habitually dragged around by every shiny object, every loud alert, every ad, you consciously choose where your attention goes. Or, maybe more accurately, where you don't let it go. That withdrawal is the discipline. It's the effort of holding your inner focus steady against that constant external pull.
Okay, consolidation, not deprivation. And when you manage to restrain that input, what's the specific evolutionary outcome? The sources mentioned focus and pranic refinement. Let's unpack pranic refinement a bit. For listeners maybe not familiar, what's actually happening? How does withdrawing sensory input refine our energy?
Well, focus is the immediate logical result, right? If you stop spraying your vital energy across 5 different sensory inputs, it naturally starts to pool, to concentrate.
Okay.
Now, prana refers to that underlying vital life force. Usually when we're constantly engaging with the outside world, listening to someone, watching something, scrolling online, our prana flows outward. It gets dispersed, scattered through all these peripheral energy channels, the nadis, sensory withdrawal, the tapas of restraint. It reverses that flow. It pulls that outward-moving energy back towards your core, often consolidating it, ideally within the sushumna, the central channel.
So if level 1 gave us the stable engine, level 2 is basically creating like high-octane fuel for it.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy. When that energy is channeled and refined, it gains power, speed, purity. You shift from having this kind of gross, scattered energy system, attention darting everywhere, to a refined, consolidated one. And this refined energy, this prana, is precisely what the mind needs to fuel the sustained internal work and higher concentration required in the next levels. It's essential energetic prep work.
We've got control over the physical vessel. We've consolidated our vital energy. This feels like the first major turn inward, doesn't it? We've moved past the concrete stuff, and now we're ready to step into the notoriously chaotic landscape of the mind.
Absolutely. We're shifting now from that external and energetic prep work to focusing on internal control, internal architecture, really.
Yeah.
We get to use that refined fuel we just talked about to tackle what is often the most subtle and, frankly, frustrating domain for many.
Domain 3. Mental thought.
Right.
And this is where so many people, even disciplined people, hit a major wall, isn't it? You can force your body to sit still. You can close your eyes to shut out the world, but the mind just keeps going. It's like this wild engine churning out constant distraction.
That really is the pivotal challenge here.
Yeah.
If the friction back in level 1 was against the body's external habits, the discipline here is against the internal, habitual, nonstop generation of thoughts, memories, worries, plans.
The monkey mind.
The classic monkey mind, exactly.
Yeah.
So the practitioner's experience in this domain is defined as persistence through distraction. This is a sustained, ongoing effort, and it requires a really profound, subtle kind of will. You're not trying to, crush the thoughts or eliminate them entirely.
Right.
You're simply refusing to invest your attention, your refined prana from level 2, in following them down every rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You just persistently bring your focus back to whatever your chosen anchor is, breath, mantra, whatever, over and over and over again, no matter what tricks the mind plays.
Okay, let's push on that idea of persistence. How is this different from the sort of brute willpower we might have used back in the physical domain? If I sit for an hour, and honestly, I just hate every second of my mind wandering, am I actually practicing mental tapas? Or am I just fighting myself?
That's a really crucial distinction. Physical willpower is usually effort applied for a finite time, right? Running the mile, holding the yoga pose. Mental persistence is effort applied against a current that feels ceaseless. But, and this is key, the effort itself is one of gentleness, of non-reaction.
Gentleness. That sounds counterintuitive for discipline.
It does, but think about it. If you apply brute force, that white-knuckle willpower, to your mind, what happens? You create tension, internal struggle, which just fuels more chaotic thought. Tapas here is much more subtle. You acknowledge the thought, maybe you observe its nature briefly, and then you gently redirect your attention, refusing to get caught up in the story. It's the persistence of observation, not the force of suppression. And doing that gently, again and again, requires that sustained, refined energy we built up in level 2. You can't do it if you're energetically scattered.
Okay, gentle, persistent observation. And what are the results? The evolutionary outcome here is defined as patience and clarity. Those are pretty sophisticated outcomes. How do they arise from this?
Well, patience is almost a direct result of realizing just how futile it is to fight the mind head on. When you persist in just observing without demanding immediate silence, you inevitably start to learn that thoughts are temporary. They're like waves. They arise, they crest, they pass. Persistence teaches you to simply wait them out. And that ability to be present without needing reality or your internal state to be different right now, that's patience.
Okay, I see the link to patience. But clarity, how does just refusing to engage with thoughts translate into actual intellectual clarity?
Clarity emerges because the mental noise, the static, begins to subside. So much of our judgment, our decision-making, it's clouded, right? By unconscious biases, by fear, by old emotional stories playing out. By persistently refusing to engage with these distracting internal narratives, you start to separate the signal, the actual information, from the static. Intellectual clarity means you're no longer making choices driven primarily by internal fear or past hurts or habitual reactions. You're basing them on a clearer, more objective assessment of what's actually in front of you. It's sophisticated tapas because it transforms the very way your intelligence functions.
That's fascinating. So, okay, we've managed physical control, we've refined our energy, and now we've generated mental clarity and patience. Now, Domain 4 feels like a really critical bridge. It seems to take that hard-won internal clarity and apply it back out into the world. Domain 4 is ethical action.
Yes, this is absolutely where tapas has to prove its worth in the real world, in real-time interactions. If level 3 gave you that internal insight, level 4 demands external integrity. It's the proving ground for the whole system we've built so far.
Okay, and the experience here is specified as integrity under stress. Let's pause on that under stress part. Why is the stress test so vital? Doesn't the clarity we just talked about from level 3 naturally lead to ethical action anyway?
But intellectual clarity is cheap when things are easy, isn't it?
Good point.
Anyone can talk a good game about high moral values when they're comfortable, philosophically. But Tapas insists that an action only really earns the name discipline when it's maintained under pressure. Under temptation, difficulty, maybe even threat. It's easy to be honest when telling the truth costs you nothing.
Right.
It requires genuine tapas, real inner fire to maintain honesty and integrity when doing so might cost you that promotion or strain a relationship or mean taking a financial hit. This domain tests whether the clarity you found in level 3 is actually strong enough to hold up against real-world friction.
I see. So the discipline isn't just doing the ethical thing, it's maintaining the alignment between the clear internal value you cultivated in level 3 and the potentially costly external decision you face in level 4.
Precisely. And the evolutionary outcomes really reflect this forging process. Character and coherence. Character isn't defined by what you say you believe. It's defined by what you actually do when the pressure's on. Character gets forged in that crucible, the test of integrity.
Okay.
And coherence is the beautiful result of that alignment. When your inner values, which you've clarified and stabilized, consistently match your outward actions, especially under stress, you achieve coherence. If there's a gap between what you know is right, level 3 clarity, and what you actually do when tested, level 4 action, you lack coherence. Tapas here systematically works to close that gap, making the practitioner, ideally, utterly reliable, integrated, whole.
This feels like a major milestone, the halfway point maybe? Moving us from establishing structure and stability towards something deeper. Subtlety, vulnerability, perhaps. We've got physical consistency, refined energy, mental clarity, and proven external integrity. Now we have to dive even deeper, past the intellect and into the realm of emotions.
Exactly. This final ascent, it really requires more surrender than control, in a way. Levels 1 through 4 were largely about making the whole system stable, reliable, coherent. Levels 5 and 6 focus much more on integration and ultimate awareness targets that are far more subtle, more fluid than physical habits or structured thoughts.
Okay, let's approach Domain 5 then, the emotional heart. This feels incredibly subtle and, yeah, deeply personal. How on earth do you apply discipline tapas to something as volatile and well, feeling is emotion. It almost seems counterintuitive, like you risk just shutting down or repressing feelings.
And that's why applying tapas here is probably the most vulnerable and maybe the least conventional form of discipline we've discussed. And you're right, to flag repression, it's absolutely not about repression. Repression is forcing emotion away. This discipline is about forcing attention onto the emotion. The experience defined here is awareness through pain.
Awareness through pain.
Yes, it's the discipline of maintaining consciousness, maintaining that observational stance you work so hard to build in the mental domain, level 3. Maintaining it even when you are flooded with difficult emotions, grief, anger, shame, fear, despair.
So the tapas isn't trying to stop the pain or avoid it, but rather refusing to let your mental structure collapse because of the pain.
Right.
But how do we differentiate this disciplined observation from just, intellectualizing your suffering or using that mental clarity to kind of detach and avoid feeling the vulnerability? Doesn't forcing discipline here risk making the heart sort of hard instead of resilient?
That is an absolutely essential challenge and a real danger if misunderstood. The distinction lies entirely in the nature of the observation. If you're intellectualizing, you're basically using your level 3 clarity to analyze the pain, maybe categorize it, explain it away, dismiss it. That's avoidance, using the mind to escape the heart. Tapas in level 5 requires using that level 3 clarity, and crucially, the level 4 character, strength the integrity to simply hold space for the raw physical sensation of the emotion in the body, without judgment, without analysis, without immediately jumping into the story behind it. When strong emotion hits, our default is usually to contract, to retreat, to numb out, or to lash out. The discipline of the heart is to stay present with the sensation itself, allowing the feeling to move, to process, without collapsing your internal structure or immediately reacting. This takes immense refined stability built up through the previous levels.
Holding space for the raw sensation, wow. And what results from this really profound, deep work? Holding awareness right there in the fire of your own feeling. The evolutionary outcome is listed as compassion and stability.
Yes, and compassion, in this specific context, isn't pity. It's not just feeling sorry for someone. It's a shared understanding that's born directly from your own disciplined experience. If you have developed the capacity, through tapas, to hold steady, disciplined awareness within your own profound emotional pain, if you truly know what that suffering feels like, not just intellectually, but from that deep observational space, you gain an unparalleled ability to witness it in others without immediately getting overwhelmed or needing to fix it or turning away. You recognize the shared human experience of it. And this ability to withstand your own internal turbulence translates directly into profound emotional stability when faced with external chaos or others' pain. Your heart center becomes resilient, integrated, expansive, not brittle or hard.
That link is really striking. The stability built through your own disciplined awareness of pain is what actually enables true compassion.
Okay, that prepares us then for the absolute pinnacle, domain 6, spiritual consciousness. This is the apex of the whole continuum. It is. At this stage, theoretically, you've mastered the physical vessel. You've refined your energy, stabilized your mind, proven your character in the world, and integrated your emotional heart. So tapas now transcends all those previous levels to target the very root of self-perception identity itself. What's left to apply discipline to when the mind and heart are stable? Well, the very notion of who you think you are.
The experience here is described as inquiry into identity. That sounds huge. The ultimate subtle effort. How does one even apply discipline to questioning the self? And what stops this from just becoming an endless philosophical navel-gazing exercise?
It is huge. It's the final, and in many ways, the ultimate and necessary surrender of the ego's deepest assumptions. It's the direct, sustained, disciplined questioning of the fundamental nature of the self. Who is this I that has been disciplined? Who is the one experiencing suffering? Who is the one feeling emotion? This tapas is about relentless intellectual and, more importantly, spiritual honesty. And to your point about philosophy, it cannot be just abstract philosophy. It has to become experiential. It relies entirely on the mental clarity from level 3, and especially the emotional stability from level 5 that you've already built. Without them, this kind of deep inquiry would quickly devolve into either paralyzing existential fear or just abstract mental games. The discipline is in maintaining the inquiry, like holding a question alive in your awareness, hour after hour, day after day, maybe year after year, until the existing structure of your assumed identity begins to soften, perhaps even dissolve, in the light of that sustained direct seeing.
So all the 5 previous levels were essentially about creating the incredibly robust psychological and energetic infrastructure needed for this final, potentially destabilizing act of investigation. You need that level 5 stability to navigate the potential dissolution of identity in level 6. And the outcome, the highest schools mentioned, wisdom and liberation.
Exactly. Wisdom here isn't just collecting more knowledge. It's direct, lived realization, the experiential truth that dawns when the inquiry into identity finally yields its answer, or rather, dissolves the questioner. And liberation is the natural consequence of that. If tapas, all along, has been this systematic, self-imposed effort to refine the self, then the ultimate point of all that effort must be freedom. Freedom from the bondage of the gross, the habitual, the reactive, the limited sense of self, the entire continuum. As detailed by Karnik and rooted in those eightfold yoga practices, it's all been designed step by step to prepare the practitioner for this final stage of profound intellectual and spiritual freedom, moving definitively from the gross illusions of habit right through to the subtle truth of consciousness itself. #outro.
Wow. We've really mapped out an incredible journey of internal transformation there. We've tracked how discipline, how tapas evolves, starting from that very simple, tangible friction with habit in the physical body, domain 1, all the way up to the ultimate subtle effort of inquiry into identity itself and spiritual consciousness, domain 6.
And the real power of systemizing it like this, I think, lies in seeing that logical progression. How the physical friction yields generalized discipline,
Right.
which then supports the focus gained from restraining the senses. That focus enables the persistence needed for mental thought, which results in clarity.
Right.
That clarity gets tested out in the world through ethical action, forging character and coherence. That character then provides the stability needed to hold awareness through emotional pain, leading to compassion. And then finally, all of that accumulated strength and clarity prepares the ground for that ultimate inquiry into identity, which grants wisdom and ultimately liberation. It all builds.
It really does.
Yeah.
This detailed framework gives such a clear structural view of personal mastery. It shows that discipline isn't just random punishment or grim willpower, but actually a precise science of refinement. We started off wrestling with that idea, didn't we? That discipline is just sweat and struggle. But what this exploration, based on Karnik's research and eightfold yoga, really shows is that tapas is far more refined. It's a deliberate, systematic path. And if you follow it, it seems to guarantee a specific kind of evolutionary outcome at every single step.
Which leads us to maybe a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to kind of mull over as you integrate all this. If tapas requires that persistence through distraction in the mental domain, and it requires integrity under stress in the ethical domain, we have to ask, when you're starting out on this journey, which single domain presents the most critical bottleneck for you personally? Is it overcoming that initial physical inertia? Or is it maybe conquering the mental chatter? Because so much hinges on that. The structure is laid out, but where you are right now will probably define your most essential first step towards that ultimate goal of liberation.